today my guest is Sarah Megan Thomas, who is the writer, producer, and lead actress in the feature film Backwards. Now, Sarah, since I'll just give a little background. The film is about an Olympic hopeful, a rower who, for whom things don't turn out exactly as she would have hoped. Sarah, so since you wrote the screenplay, I got to ask, was this somewhat autobiographically inspired?
Not me personally, although I did row in high school and college, but a friend of mine who I rowed with in college took time off Williams and was the number one alternate for the Olympics. And she came back to college, and that was a huge achievement from our perspective, the team's perspective. But I thought, I love sports films, but they kind of usually always win in the end, which is also part of the fun. But I thought, where is the movie about someone chasing their dreams who is quite competent at the highest level and just doesn't quite make it and has to find another path? And I think that's almost a more universal theme.
A totally human theme. I mean, very relatable in all walks of life, all endeavors, I think. When you were writing it, did you think of yourself for the lead role? Was that part of your hope?
For this one, I did, yes. And I think, I trained as an actress. I was a drama major in college, and then I went to London for postgraduate. And, on the acting side of things, I came back. And at the time, they're just, I was getting the Beer Girl commercial, the soap opera, those kinds of things, and really wanted to venture into film. So this one, because I was a rower and it was a deeply personal experience on that level, I knew it would be challenging to find some big name actress who also knew how to row,
Right,
which
right.
is a
Well,
quite
right,
hard.
right,
um,
right.
so yes, for this one I did, and then but with the leading guy, I didn't initially have James Van Der Beek in mind. But when you get these lists, and his name was on a list from his agent, and I thought, oh, like we could get him, like, really? Like,
Really?
should we
Right.
really make him an offer? And he was so receptive, and immediately said yes. And the casting was perfect because, well, I didn't watch Dawson's Creek growing up. I watched Friday Night Lights,
Yeah.
and I knew that there would be an audience my age who really knew his work, and then also a younger generation who was learning his work. He was on Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23 at that
Right.
time. But he just has this very warm, coachy feel to him, that's very relatable, and again is kind of tricky to cast sometimes.
Well, I mean, he was amazing in the part. And I mean, for an indie film, was this your first producing experience as well?
So I started in theater actually, and I ran a theater company for a couple of years. So I kind of got my feet wet producing productions off Broadway. But this was my first film, and I definitely am so glad I did not know what I was doing at the time, or I never would have done it. So I always say, just do it, just do it, just do it the first
Right.
time. So
Uh,
yes.
the well, speaking of your producing hat, the music in the film is quite incredible. How did you get that Cyndi Lauper song again on an indie film budget?
So this is kind of one of my favorite stories about Backwards because, the music needed for a certain scene takes place at prom. And me and James Beek are chaperoning prom, a current high school prom, at the high school where we went to prom together. So from a musical perspective, I had to find a song that would have played 15 years ago and been popular. It's still popular now.
Right, right.
And it's a slow song, and something everyone knows. And I immediately thought time after time. And then I just Googled it, thinking you're never going to get this. And I saw that the writers were two. It was Cyndi Lauper and a man named Rob Hyman. And Rob Hyman is one of the founders of the Hooters, which is a big Philly band, and we shot in Philly. Well, small world, when I was 5 years old, Eric, the co-founder of the Hooters, dated my babysitter. So I knew Eric. I swear to God, like, you just have to go to Google. So I reached out to Eric, who connected me with Rob, who was so nice. And he saw some clips of the film. He talked to Cyndi. We pitched Cyndi. She loved the themes in the movie. And once they said yes, then it was about getting the label, Sony to say yes.
Right.
But I found in my experience, once you had like the passionate support of the writers, that was not so difficult. And then I got the Hooters to write the end song, write an original end song. So it was kind of a 2-for-1.
Well, that's great for the independent filmmakers watching this to understand that when you're getting the rights to the film, you're actually dealing with both the record label and the creative writers of the music. And as you're saying, if you get the label doesn't, the label is in it for business. So if you're an independent film, you're probably not their first priority. But if you can get the person who wrote the music or the lyrics to want to be in your production, that makes all the difference.
Totally. And, we gave some back end for this song. And we had the passionate support of the two writers for Cyndi Lauper's version, which was key. Like, we didn't just
Right,
use the song and then
right.
go re record it. And then also, like, we were a low budget film. And so we're able to pitch the budget range to, the music label and say, like, look, I'm giving you the largest piece I have for music. And at that point, I found it quite easy to do a deal.
One another thing I wanted to ask you was, one of those uh, old adages is don't if you're making a film, don't use children and don't use animals. I think I would add to that, try to steer clear of water. But of course, in your movie, you could not steer clear of water. What kind of challenges did that present?
I agree. I agree with that comment, Andrew. Water was a huge challenge in terms of equipment, which I didn't think of at the time. And I'll give you an example. We wanted a shot of me rowing in a single. And Harlan Bosmajin, who is our amazing cinematographer and had done some B camera work for the Social Network, so had a little bit of a cheat sheet, wanted to put the camera, on the boat. Now, if there are any rowers that watch this, singles flip quite easily. And especially for me, I didn't row a single, I rowed a 4 or an
Right,
8. And so basically, Ben Hickernell, the director's like, okay, so the camera's here, like, don't flip the boat and ruin the camera, just row there and back. And like, I don't think, and I didn't flip the boat, but I almost did. I don't think I've ever been more nervous in my life. And I'm supposed to be like confident.
right,
I'm
right,
not so sure if you go back and look at that shot, I look super confident.
right.
But yeah, no, there are a lot of challenges with water because, you have to be very careful with the equipment, the weather, all kinds of stuff.
And were the cameras insured? I mean, that would be a big loss.
They're insured, but like any insurance, it's like car insurance or whatever, there's deductibles and, then getting another camera.
Right,
And with anything in an indie film, there isn't really a line item for the deductibles of
right,
losing your
right,
camera.
right. Yeah, in an indie film, the contingency usually isn't very big, like
Yes,
zero.
yes.
Do
It's
you
let's
have
go raise
any?
some more money.
Right, exactly. Do you have any questions I can answer?
Yes. So I had a film that came out right in the pandemic, like literally its theatrical was shut down. And what I'm so curious about is since then in the festival circuit, which I have not been on since then with a film, how we had some festival screenings right before the pandemic. But since then, I've noticed even with Sundance, the transition to virtual screenings. And I'm curious, and it seems that that is here to stay, how you see that affecting sales for your indie filmmakers, because you can't really, I know you can never guarantee someone sitting there the whole time, but
Right.
somebody can be popping on your movie for 30 seconds, if at all. And number two, for piracy concerns for indie filmmakers.
Um, the I think you're right that more and more festivals have a virtual component. Um, Many of the smaller festivals are willing to waive the virtual component. I mean, if you're in a top line festival like Sundance, if they want the film to be part of their virtual component, I think you're well served to agree. And you can be confident with something like the Sundance Institute that they have all the protections in place necessary to make sure the audience is limited to people who bought tickets, that it's geo-blocked if it's supposed to be geo-blocked, and any protection they say they have, you can be confident about. A smaller festival with a smaller budget, I think it still can be a concern. And in terms of how it impacts sales, still there are many buyers who are not more streaming platforms who aren't going to want to offer film to their subscribers, for instance, if it's been available elsewhere already. I mean, part of what subscribers are paying for is a first look at something, some sense of exclusivity, some reason to pay a subscription for something they can't see elsewhere. So if it was more or less freely available, that's going to be a disincentive to a buyer to license it. In terms of piracy, I mean, there are two ways to look at it. That many indie films aren't pirated because no one really cares. And so that's not a huge concern. If you're in the fortunate position, like Backwards, where it's a strong film, it had a theatrical release, there's awareness, you have a major star, yeah, that film will be pirated. So I think you have to be careful. And most sites, at least in this country, that may feature pirated material, as soon as you write them a letter, they take it down. I mean, they're very good at that. YouTube particularly, just there's no questions asked, they take it down. And then if it was a mistake, they'll put it back up. If it indeed wasn't pirated, they'll put it back up. But the burden of proof is on the owner of the film to prove that it was that they have the rights to show the film on the platform. So is your film that got cut off at the legs during the pandemic available?
Yeah, so this is a call to, oh no, it's a call to spy. It was IFC. It had a nationwide
yeah.
theatrical, literally. So this is a separate story, but my baby came home from the hospital and the release date got pushed like on the same day to on demand. It was like one of those like crazy days. But that was very interesting because we were supposed to have a splash. This is another maybe tidbit for filmmakers. Spyscape was a sponsor. They were doing a huge premiere. Everything got gutted and canceled. And something that I'm really proud of, because the sales are actually quite strong, is it's all about like finding when you have to pivot those friends. So for example, for this like online premiere, a friend of mine runs an ice cream in San Francisco, and I got her to do spy flavors, 3 custom made spy, and she shipped them to every press person and person that was attending the premiere. And we made it like an event. And so, we live in these times where there's so much competition and there's big movies like Minecraft, which I saw in theaters this weekend. Oh my God. I'm a good mom.
Yeah.
But just to kind of use those resources because it's a hard,
Right. It takes a village, always. I mean, I'd say to filmmakers, they say, well, should I talk to anybody when we're working together and selling a film? Should I talk to anybody? They ask. And I say, definitely. If you're sitting on a plane next to Bob Iger, mention your movie, please. It only helps us. So yeah, that's the right attitude. I mean, as you know, in the making of independent film, from the making to the distribution to the afterlife, it's a community effort, and you have to keep pushing.
And from your perspective, I'm curious if you agree with this comment, because I do. Someone once told me when the like movie's complete, that hurdle, like the distribution hurdle, is even more challenging. And what do you think about that? Do you agree with that, or?
I think every step is challenging in a different way, but it is definitely true that getting the film in the can, as it used to be called, is not the end of the struggle. It continues to be a different skill set. So you rely and collaborate with different kinds of people at each step along the way. So but whatever it is, you have to keep working it. I mean, there's no free lunch for sure, ever.
Never.
Particularly at Disney World, where I know you're off to. So
Yes, for
have
spring
a
break,
good,
no free lunch.
right. Have a good trip, and
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for taking your time. Nice seeing you, Sarah.
Nice seeing you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.